Hey, what's going on, fam? Hope you guys are doing well. It's Saturday afternoon. It's 1 o'clock here on the Pacific Coast, LA, Los Angeles time. I just got back from Hawaii, so I'm kind of jet lagged a little bit. But I got a bunch of work to catch up on, so I thought, hey, let's do a live stream. Let's chat. I'm working on a bunch of mixes. For May, I got about 3-4 mixes in the chamber, and then I'll just be kind of moving through mixes. So I wanted to do a live stream with you guys and show you some of the process of setting up a mix, and getting the drums going, getting the bass going, getting the vocals going, etc. So this will be a really fun live stream. Hopefully you guys will get a lot out of it. And all I ask is, if you do get anything out of it, that you guys share the show, drop some comments, show some love, hit the like button, all that shit. YouTube loves it, pushes it out, reaches more people, builds a community for you guys. I don't get paid anything from my YouTube. All right, so this is all free for you guys. If you guys like any of it, you get anything out of it, just share it. That's it. And drop questions and try to be involved. I'm here to help you guys. I'm here to show you what I know from over 25 years doing this. And yeah, it's been a long journey for me. It's been a lot of money put into this, a lot of time and effort. So I'm just going to kind of dive in. Let's use some new plugins, all that kind of stuff. The song is called Time and Space. It's by Ryan Helm. I don't know if he's got a band name or something, but if you're in the house, say what's up, and don't be a creep. Yo, what's up, Scott? How you doing, man? And I know maybe not a whole lot of people will join in on a Saturday because some of y'all are doing other stuff. But if you're here, hopefully you get a lot out of the stream, and I'm here to answer your questions, so you can drop them right in the chat. I'm going to dive into Pro Tools here. Let's share the screen and let's get into it right away. So first thing I got here is I have my session set up in my template, right? And I always put my reference right on top, and that way I can reference the reference. I don't want to stray too far from the reference. Unless the client's like, yo, I hate my reference, make it way doper. I'm going to try and just listen to the reference and bring out all the amazing things in the reference and keep the emotion right and the feeling, but just make everything a lot better. I mean, that's what I do as a mixer. I'm here to make it sound like a record, but not to take away from it and not to change it too much. Now I notice there's a bunch of lead time on this reference bounce. So the first thing I want to do is just kind of make sure that these are all trimmed up and that the stems meet and match the reference, right? When I drop the stems in. So let's just kind of play the reference here so you guys can kind of get a feel for the song. And I always play the reference and I really feel out the song before I even start mixing. And I pay attention to what's going on. But I've already listened to this 3 or 4 times. So I'm going to let you guys listen to it. And I won't play the whole thing.
Till you took away everything I couldn't say. You made me think that maybe
So that's about it. Real gooey, real chill. Drums kind of feel like you can feel them, but they have a lot of space around them, right? So I want to like mimic that and keep those kind of vibes. But I think there's a lot of things that could be improved in this mix as well. It's not as three-dimensional as it should be. It should feel like more gooey, I think, and it should feel more thickened. It doesn't feel thick to me. It feels kind of weak and anemic and kind of just bleh, two-dimensional. It's not really hitting the way I want it to. So what I start out with always with my mixes, especially with anything with drums, is the drums. So right here, I have all my drums. The percussion is sort of in this mustard color, and those are going to the drum mix, and all the drums are going to the drum mix. They go to the drum mix here, they go to the drum master, and then they go to the all drums bus, okay? So that's the all drums and bass right here. And then that goes to the master augs, and the master augs is the final stage for my mix, right? And then, of course, the reference just goes out to the master, right? That way I can solo it, and I'm not going through the master augs. Hopefully that makes sense. Just kind of like a subgroup for the master. On the master, I already have my master bus dialed in, and I like to mix through it. I kind of treat it like a console, like a mastering console. Like I have all my stuff on, and I can, kind of tweak stuff as I go. I think of this whole thing as one thing. I don't think of it as like, I go to the variable mute, and then I go to this, and then I go to that. I think of these all as like working together, right? And I'll kind of explain that as I move through this. But right now, it's all about gain staging, and it's all about getting these drums to sound great and have a space around them, and just pay attention to what's going on. First thing when setting up a session that I always love to do is make sure I go save the session as, right? And give it today's date, right? So I've already done that, 05/04/24. Mix V1 means that I haven't made any revisions from the client. So if I get to V2, it means client has revisions, and I'm usually going to have client revisions. It's just kind of part of the process. So don't ever get down on that. Like when you send a mix and the client's like, this is not what we thought it would be, here's all these notes. Especially with new clients, you don't really know what to expect, because I don't think they know what to expect. And a lot of new clients have never even worked with a professional mixing engineer. They get temp love. They love their reference mix, and it may or may not be good at all. It may be shit. It may not stand a chance anywhere, but they've heard it so many times. It's like, bro, this is not what we wanted. We like what we did. And it's like, yeah, but you've heard it like a million times, right? So you kind of have to go through that process with them and learn what they like. And you just, the more you work with a client, obviously, you're going to get more in tune with what they like as artists, as producers, as whoever. Okay, so it's really, really important that you understand that, because people get temp love, and a lot of people nowadays, artists, they mix themselves. Whether they're good at mixing or not, they're just going to do it, and that's okay. It's just you have to figure out what you're going to help them with. And you really do want to help them. Like, that's the whole idea. You specialize in mixing. I've studied this shit for most of my life. I'm trying to figure out how to translate records to success, right? To get more streams, to get more people listening, and to get more opportunities for my clients. What's up, Beats with Kev? Yo, Piercy, I haven't tried the SSL de-esser. I'm pretty stuck on the FabFilter de-esser. I just love that one. So it's hard for me to be like, yeah, I'm going to try a new one, because it always does exactly what I want it to do. But yeah, de-essing, I find a lot of times is like, de-essing is because the microphone is picking up way too much sibilance from the artist, and it's the wrong microphone for the artist, or it's the EQ and the compression and the saturation and stuff is being overdone, so you have to de-ess, and then it causes a lot of artifacts. So I try to stay away from de-essing really hard to answer that question. But I heard the SSL stuff is really dope, and there's an EQ, I think SSL EQ, that I really want to try out. What's up, man? Poland. See, we got people from all over the world. That's what's up. I love that. Love to see you guys here on a Saturday. Always good people. All right, so let's get to the drums, because that's what I care about right now. With the drums, I have the drums, percussion, and then I have the bass, okay? And the bass is going to be in yellow. So I do yellow. Anything with this teal color is going to be like an effect return. So this is a printed snare tom reverb that the client sent, all right, in their stems. Another thing you really want to do before you get started with a mix is make sure you know the key of the song and the BPM of the song. Right? So very simple to do. You could use plugins, to figure this stuff out. So for the reference, I'll just solo it and make sure I know the key of the song. So I'm just going to go to Auto-Tune, right? Antares, and I'll just go to Auto Key. And this is a really cool tool for this. You can literally just, figure it out really, really fast. Auto Key, and I'm just going to play it, and then it's going to detect the key. All right, and another thing I really love about this plugin and why I use it a lot is not because I can't figure out that it's in A minor. I could easily like start playing my keyboard or grab a guitar or whatever, but I'm lazy. I'm an engineer. Like I don't want to move, right? So the less I can move and the more I could just click on something and go, okay, cool, then the easier it is. But that's one thing. But the second thing is you can send to Auto-Tune, which is amazing because then I can have my vocals, for example, and I can have, let's say, a bunch of Auto-Tunes on here. And if I have all my vocals have all these different Auto-Tunes on there, if I hit send to Auto-Tune, it's automatically going to send the A minor key to all of the Auto-Tunes within my session. So that's a really great way when a client sends you something and the Auto-Tune resets or they're in the wrong key. That happens a lot, especially with like R&B rap stuff. Like they're just like in the wrong key. It's like, yo, you don't even have this on the right key for your vocal. And that just turns into a mess. But another thing it does is it gives you the BPM. So this is telling me it's 89 BPM, A minor, C major, super dope. And I can just plug all that stuff into anything, right? So when I'm tuning with Melodyne, when I'm tuning with Auto-Tune, when I'm setting anything up, I know it's an A minor and we're at 89 BPM, which is probably 90 BPM. But I'm going to go up here and I'm going to fix this because this says 88 here. So I'm just going to go to 89. And then in Pro Tools, like what I usually will do is I'll just look for the downbeat, right? So you can just kind of check where this is at, right? And you can kind of eyeball it. Is it landing on a downbeat, right? Is it locked to a grid pretty well? And if it starts to stray like this, see it's starting to get ahead of it, you could change this and you can go in and go, okay, never mind. Maybe it's 90, or maybe it's 88, or maybe it's just swung really hard. But the only way you're really gonna know how that like is affected is if you go to other parts down in the track and see if it slipped at all, right? So what I would do is find the nearest downbeat for the track. So you can see here, it's not really landing on a downbeat. Like here you could see, right? It's like on a whatever. So what I'll do is I'll find like the nearest downbeat. So maybe it's on bar 3, right? So let's grab this and let's move it to here and go to bar 3 on it and just make sure that we know the BPM. So that's pretty locked right there on bar 3, right? So if I'm going to count this, I can easily just count it out. Right, and you can see that this is the downbeat here. So it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, right? So it's right here is that downbeat. So what I want that to do is land on the downbeat here, right? So I'm just going to change this until I see that start to happen, right? So it's at 89 right now. 88 goes like ahead of it. So I think probably around 89, 90. 89 was probably right from the Auto-Tune, right? So it's just got a little swing to it and stuff. So we'll just kind of see, this is hanging back a little bit. If I go to 88, it's like ahead of it, right? So probably want to keep it around 89. That's probably a good sweet spot for it. So just setting the BPM is a really important thing because you have delays, you have reverb times and all that, and that's all going to rely on what your BPM is on your session, okay? Super important to understand. But let's get into the nuts and bolts. I'm tired of talking about bullshit. I don't care about any of that stuff right now. What I care about is getting these drums sounding dope. So with drums, let's just solo all these drums I have here. And I'll talk about, you know, what I hear and what, you know, what I look for here. So let's check it out. All right, so those are already sounding way bigger and more spacious and more vibey than the temp, right? So I'm going to go back to the reference, and remember, I just pulled these stems in, so I'm gonna move everything back so it all matches up. And here's the reference with the drums and everything. Right, so I just start to balance things in. Obviously the shaker is really loud and it's panned a little too far. With everything else, because I haven't set up any of the other stems, I'm just going to mute them. They're at the bottom here. I just drag them in, right? The only thing I've popped into my template so far are the drums and the drum stems. So I'm gonna mute all those and go back up here, and we're just gonna focus on the drums. And also I have this bass in here, which is not a synth bass, it's just a bass, right? So we're gonna call it bass. And let's listen to the drums and bring them in, and I'm just gonna kind of pay attention to what's going on. These are really well recorded drums. I think they sound really good. So here's the kick drum, and I start with the kick. There's a kick sub, and we're just gonna kind of play with these, and I'll show you what I've done with these so far, just because I spent like, you know, 2 minutes on it, just kind of, you know, changing some things. But the kick drum, snare drum, and you know, what those sound like together, and then popping in the overheads and the room mics, and then popping in the toms, and like, what am I listening for, and like, what's too much and what's going on, you know, where are things panned, things like that, right? So here's kick. All right, so we're getting a little more punch, a little more lift from the R comp. I'm just basically bringing up the low level information. It's making that kick drum just kind of smack a little bit better, right? And it feels tighter and it feels punchier to me, personally. I like the sound of that. When you're messing with attack and release on a kick drum, I always think about, okay, if I attack it too hard, I'm gonna kill the attack, and I'm gonna get this like little click. It's gonna go tick. I'm gonna get more of that, and it's gonna sound unnatural. So what I wanna do is I wanna let the initial transient in, the do, right? And then I want it to attack. So do, right? So that's what I'm trying to do, is I'm like trying to get the groove, right? Release as well. If I'm taking the release slower, I'm gonna get a more heavy weighted sound. If I take it faster, it's going to sound more punchy and transient, okay? Because you're basically letting go really fast. So it's going do, do, do. If you release really slow, it's going to go do, do, do. Because it's holding, it's compressing longer. And if you have makeup gain, you're bringing up the low level information, right? Now I'm not compressing much. I'm compressing maybe a dB on this kick drum, right? Okay, so what I'm trying to do also is keep the mic bleed. I like the mic bleed. It sounds cool, sounds organic. It's a well-recorded kit, and I'll pay attention to that mic bleed as I am putting in the other elements as well, because there's a tom in there, there's a kick in there, there's a snare in there, there's all these things in there, and it's going to give dimension to the drum kit, and it's going to make it sound more natural. If I don't want a very natural sound, I will gate this kick. I will replace the kick drum, etc. But this is a very natural sounding song. So the release itself, what I want to do is release before the snare hits, right? So that's why I have the release like down here at about like 18 or whatever, because I want it to release and then the snare hits, release and then the snare hits, and then release and then the snare. I'm just trying to find the rhythm of the song. You can also make sure you understand this. On the R comp, you have ARC and you have manual. If ARC is on, it's automatically releasing. So it has automatic release control. If I take that off to manual, now I'm using this release. Okay. So anything like when you're doing this and you're adjusting the release, it's not doing anything. So if I take this to manual, let's hear this. And whenever you want to hear compression a lot, just compress the shit out of it, right? So I'm going to leave it at 2.5 to 1, and then I'm just going to take the threshold down so you can really hear what the compressor is doing and how it's reacting. All right, and then once you get that groove and you hear what's going on, oh, the kick is nice and punchy, but it's not, I'm not shortening it, right? Because if you take the attack super fast, you kind of shorten the kick and you make it more punchy and faster, right? So you're just like making it like punchy and then grabbing it really quick. So this is like letting the pillow through, right? So now I can back off the threshold and just give it, 1 to 2 dB. And that's just for control and to bring the low level information up. Now let's talk about the EQ here. So the EQ, whenever you're using an EQ on one source, right, it's a kick drum, and you have a microphone on the kick drum, and then you have an outside microphone on the kick drum, and then you have a sub bass on the kick drum, right? You have multiple mics on one source. You want to use natural phase on the FabFilter, okay? This is just going to help you when you have two different sources, two different mics on the same source. So for example, if I have the kick and then I have the kick sub, I have the Pro Q3 on both of these, and I have them both on natural phase. So it's going to keep that phase coherency between them when I'm adding that plugin to each of these, right? Another thing I like to do, I just practice this a lot because I've just noticed it in the past through doing hundreds of mixes literally, is if I have an R comp and a Pro Q3, I put the R comp and the Pro Q3 on the same, like if it's a inside mic, outside mic, or inside mic, sub mic, whatever, on the kick drum, the single source, I'm going to put the same plugins on, even if this R comp isn't doing anything, okay? Just because I want to keep phase coherency between those two microphones. Very, very important. So I'm not shifting any phase between them because that can skew it. Like for example, let's say I had this guy on, this transient master on this kick, and then I left it off on this one. I might start to skew and change the phase because any sort of EQing or transient master, enveloping, shifting is going to shift the phase it's going to actually change the phase, right? It's just kind of part of these EQs, unless you're using like a linear phase EQ, which then might cause delay compensation not to work correctly within your DAW, and then you're going to get phase shifting anyway. Okay, so it's very important to understand that. Now, if I go like that, I'm going to turn this one on as well. Even if this is on 0 and 0 and 0, okay? It's just on, okay? So that's what I'm trying to tell you is like if you have an EQ on, a compressor on, whatever, on a kick that has 2 mics, 3 mics, a snare that has 2 mics, 3 mics, a guitar that has 3 mics, 4 mics, you know, just try to keep the same amount of plugins. It's just going to help you. I promise. It'll make a difference. And it may be very, very, very slight to where you can't really hear it on 1, 2 tracks. But once you start stacking 4, 8, 16, 20, 50 tracks, you're going to start to hear these small phase shifts start to skew your imaging and do some weird shit. Okay, so just keep that in mind when you use plugins. They're not perfect. Nothing's perfect. This is like computers. You're trusting the computer with a lot. Okay, so the kick in. Very important on the kick in. I'm kind of taking the top out. I like actually less steep curves because you get less phase shifting. Natural phase on the Pro Q3 is really, really good. It's damn near impossible to make this thing like do a bunch of crazy phasing issues, right? 500 is usually a big problem, I think, in kick drums and snares and just drum kick. Like when you put mics up or overheads, 500 builds up a lot. Okay, and I'll show you what that, like, let's hear 500 just so you can hear it. Right, it just sounds like paper. It's like a papery frequency, boxy, papery frequency in drums. Sometimes I like to take 500 and put it out into the sides on guitars, right? So 500 is not always bad. And this is a really big thing I hate about the internet. Like, I absolutely fucking hate the internet because of this. Because people will get online and they'll be like, you have to take 500 out of everything. It's a shitty frequency. There is no such thing as a shitty frequency. Okay. There's a shitty frequency in the representation of an overall mix that could be building up and causing issues, hitting your compressors, your saturators, or whatever too much, but it doesn't make it a shitty frequency, right? The key of the song makes a big difference. Like, what key are you in? Are you shifted up? The scale, like, are you a female vocalist? Are you a male vocalist? Where do you sit in the range? All those sort of things. There's so many things that have to do with frequency that you can never say, like, I always do this. I never would say I always do this. It's always yes and no, or yes or no. You're always going to have different things happening with different frequencies on different instruments, in different tracks, in different mixes that want different things. And we all hear differently as well. So the client might love the sound of 500 and that boxiness. They're like, I love that papery sound on the kick drum, you know? And you're like, oh shit. You know what I'm saying? So it's just, we all hear different, and the best thing you can do is find mixers and producers and writers and people to work with that hear the same way you hear, that feel the same way you feel about the music that you listen to, and that, you know, represents what you like, right? That's very important because we're all different. It's all subjective. So I'm just giving this a little 45 as well. And I'll play all these frequencies so you can really understand why I'm doing this. These are very, very small bumps too. Right, so that's probably too much. Like, I don't want to boost that. I don't want to boost any of this. I just want to take out that 500. I'm just going to take out the bottom of this. And the reason being is because we have a kick sub here. Okay, and the kick sub is, again, compressing a little bit. And then the Pro Q is just going all the way down. Now I'm going to bypass, I'm going to pop both of these together. I'm going to bypass the Pro Q3 on this sub so you can really hear the difference. All right, so you can hear what note the kick drum is tuned to. It's very, very important that you understand that. If you're in A minor and it's 440, if you divide that by 2, you're going to get 220. If you divide that by 2, you're going to get 110. If you divide that by 2, on and on, right? So that's really what you want to do, is you want to find the note, and you're going to find the frequency of the kick drum. The best thing about, another great thing about this plugin, this EQ, is the fact that it has a scale here, right? So if you're in A, it's okay to be in a perfect fourth or a perfect fifth with your kick drum tuned, right? But it's not okay if it's very dissonant tone, right? So if you look at the scale here, you have C, you have B, you have A right here, right? So you can actually take this down and you can see this is A right here. So about 55, 56 hertz, right? Makes sense? That's a note, right? So you could, if you wanted to, kind of express that A a little bit more, and you could come down here and give it a little boost in the center area, right? And just shift it down so it's more of an A. Same thing on here, right? You can come down here and you can go, okay, I want this to be like an A note, because we're in A minor. That's home, right? It's the fundamental of the whole song. So we could do that, and now we're going to have it really sit in the key of the song. Right? And then you could start to kind of take down the note that is kind of peaking, that's dissonant with it, which would be that G, right? So that's just like a step away. And when you're in the low end and you're one step away from the note, it can really cause some like really weird, like you can get a lot of dissonance going on. So I just think about those things because I want it to be musical. I want my mixes to sound musical. And to make a musical mix, it does not mean to go in and find the problematic frequencies. It's to be like, yo, this is in A minor. The kick drum is going to sit in A, and it's going to be pillowy, and it's going to feel right, right? I take this EQ and I get rid of all this shit on the top, because all of a sudden it sounds phasey with the snare drum, right? The snare drum sounds like a box. And so I get rid of that, right? I get rid of the stuff that's not musical. That's the idea. So I'm constantly thinking about how musical I can be with my mixes. Another thing, I have a kick parallel send here and a louder send, okay? I'm going to bypass the louder send because I'm not using that on the kick sub right now. And then I'm going to balance these because the kick sub still seems kind of loud. So I'm just going to kind of balance this in, and I'm going to pay attention to my SPL Hawkeye here. And I'm going to try to get around maybe -5 or so, okay? On dBTP, which is true peak, right? It's like, whatever. I'm just going to try to stay around -5 to -8. Okay, so I can have some headroom. But that's where my kick drum I want to be hitting as I start my mix. And then I want to build around that kick drum. That's my whole intention here, okay? So let's start to do that. Let's start to balance these kick drums to where they sound good and they're hitting on that peak area. Okay, check it out. All right, that feels good to me. And true peak, I'm not really going for true peak right now, but this is metering true peak. So I'm thinking, okay, -3.5, -4 is really going to be like -5, right? This is doing true peak, so it's just a little bit louder. It's just basically like trying to give you a pillow. That's what true peak really is doing. It's trying to predict, which I don't really believe in true peak. I think it's a scam. You know, when people are like, oh, are you using true peak limiting? You know, it's like, how about I just bounce the fucking track and then convert it to MP3 and listen for myself if it's going to cause any problems? How about I bounce the track and convert to OGG and listen for myself so I know if there's going to be distortion or artifacts on my shit? Why would I just trust a plugin to, you know, somehow try and figure out the math that there might be some aliasing or distortion that might happen? Fuck that. You know, I'm not, that's like trusting AI with your business. Hey, just AI is going to run my business. I'm not even going to check on it. You know, fuck it. If the AI says it's correct. Like, some of y'all are so ridiculous online too. Like, I see people just like fucking arguing about stuff that they have no idea what they're talking about. It's like, well, you got to do this and you got to do that. It's like, well, how about you just fucking listen to it? Like, I trust my ears more than I trust some meter or some fucking True Peak advanced technology made by, you know, some engineers that don't ever mix records. Like, for real. Like, just listen, right? So if you want to hear aliasing, you want to hear distortion, artifacts, etc., make your bounce, wave 24-bit, 32-bit, 44.1, 48K, whatever the fuck, convert it to OGG, play it back. Oh, no distortion? Cool, you're good to go. Leave it alone. All right? You don't need to trust in a true peak limiter. I don't care about any of that. All right, just trust your ears. Don't trust your ears if you haven't been doing this long and you're like, I have no idea. I can't even hear compression. But let's get this snare drum in. Same thing on the RComp. I'm going to leave this on automatic release control because I can see that there is some bleed here on the snare mic. You know, you can see it. But let's just play this. Let's see what we got. Okay, and I don't really like that kick sub like resonating so much. So what I might do on this is take that down, and on the bottom here is just find where it's going, because it's like playing this tone, and I might just kind of take it down just a little bit. And that's really the same as like just bringing the volume down, by the way. I'm just kind of taking down that resonant 73 hertz, which is a D note. You know, it's like if we're in A, it's like A, B, C, D. That's going to be a pretty nice, it's going to be a nice tone to play against the A, right? It sounds good, but I don't really know yet until I get the bass in, until I get the other drum mics in, if I really want that much ringing in one microphone. Because it might be happening in the room mics, it might be happening in the overheads, it might be, you know, and then you just start compounding it, and all of a sudden it's just throughout the whole track, taking up everything. And I really don't want that. So snare drum's fine for now. I will send this to a parallel, right? So I want this to kind of smack. If I want this to smack without changing the tone of the snare. Oh, and another thing, like I have this EQ on here, just taking that down and peaking 163 a little bit, which is just that thud, right? I have this on 0 latency, but I'm going to go to natural phase because the snare, the kick, and everything else was recorded together with multiple mics. You could just tell. And then this snare, I feel like, needs a little less box and a little more spit on the top. And I don't know if there is a bottom mic or any other mics. I don't see any other mics. Usually if I have a bottom mic, I can get that from the bottom mic. But in this case, it looks like I get one snare mic. So I'm going to get most of my tone from the drum rooms, the drum overheads, right? So just make sure you're not like doing too much to a close mic'd snare drum when you have other mics that are picking up the snare, right? That are going to add a bunch of color and a bunch of dimension and EQ, like the room mics. So if I do too much here and then I turn on the room mics and I go, oh, what the hell? I fucked it up. You know, I'm kind of screwed. So right away, what I want to do is just give it parallel compression, right? So we'll send this to the kick parallel, which is fine. It's hitting the same kind of thing, right? It's just parallel compression. And I'm going to turn this all the way up, and then I'm going to balance this snare and kick so that they are pretty much the same volume. It's impossible to really make a snare and a kick the same volume because we perceive the snare as louder always, just because it's in the mids. It's in the mid-range frequencies, high frequencies, so, and the kick drum's in the low end. There's some weirdness going on with the snare bleed. So let's hear this because it sounds like it's kind of like pumping or something. Maybe it was recorded with a compressor on the way in. I don't know. It's like I'm hearing the mechanics of like the kick, the actual kick, the beater, you know, the pedal. I'm hearing like these mechanics and stuff that I really don't like. And because I have drum rooms and drum overheads, I can get away with gating the snare a little bit. So that's what I'm going to do, because if I'm going to do this kind of stuff on the snare, I'm going to bring out the brightness and the snare, the actual snare that goes across the bottom, right? That metal springy kind of thing. If I'm going to bring that out, I'm also going to bring out all the other stuff that's bleeding through that snare mic. So I don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go before the EQ, I'm going to put a gate on this. I mean, there's a bunch of good gates, but it's funny. I always use this Slate Digital one because I think it's so good. I think it's Steven Slate Drums Trigger, right? Yeah, Trigger. So this Trigger 2 has a really good gate on it. I don't know. Probably because it was made for drums, right? So here's the gate, right? And we'll just turn this on and we will set this gate. Right? So we don't have to worry about the ring out of the snare because it's in the room mics. And it's also in the overheads. So let's listen to this against the overheads. And on the overheads, I just sweep out the bottom here, okay? All right, so the overheads open up the kit. It's like, yeah, it's simple. I'm not trying to overcomplicate anything. Drum overheads, I do like to add some compression to it. So that's like something I love to do on drum overheads. And the reason I like to do that is because on drum overheads, you're going to get like crashes sometimes that are just like, and then everything else just like is like mellow. So I just want to kind of even that stuff out, meaning I want to chop the tops of the overages, like the crashes, and I want to bring up the sound of the kit overall. Right? So the toms, where they're like the articulation of the toms, the panning of the toms, things like that. So compression's really good for that. I would use like a solid state compressor or, something with like not too much color. Or if you want it to sound more rounded out on your overheads because they sound too sterile and weird, you could use like tape machine plugins, or you could use like tube compressors like Fairchild, Manley, Variable Mu, stuff like that. But on this, I'm just going to use just like a VCA. So Comp VCA 65. This is from Arturia. Very simple compressor, and it's based off the DBX, right? Very, very easy. So what we can do here is just start with a preset if you want to. Just go to like a drum preset, drum bus density and aggression. That's fine. Or here we go, transient smasher, blah, 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 blah. Snare body smasher, parallel compression, that might be good. So a little parallel compression. For the DBX, it is pretty intense sometimes, so you just got to be really careful with it. So let's hear it, see what it's doing. All right, so we're just going to do a little bit of parallel. It was on like 50%, but we're just going to kind of take it back to 80 because I'm just barely touching this. But you can hear it's like it has a tone. It has its own vibe, and it kind of brings up the low level stuff, kind of brings the weight up, and just compresses on those big snare hits and stuff. So that's really nice. And I also think that I'm probably overdoing the EQ a little bit on this top stuff. So I'm just going to bypass that for now until I get the whole kit in. And then I'll decide like what I need more or less of. So let's put the drum room mics in now. And we're going to start to balance the overheads in the drum rooms just to give dimension and stuff. And then we'll bring in this reverb on the toms and the snare and everything. All right, now let's throw the floor tom in and the high tom. This is probably where you get a little too much of that boomy kind of stuff with this floor tom. Let's just check this out. So we'll have to maybe do some cleanup on this. You hear that frequency just like kind of rumbling the whole time. That doo 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 doo. So let's just let's take the Pro Q3 up here and make sure we get rid of some of that rumble, which can be down at the bottom, but it can also be like in the lows, you know, low mids. Okay, and then it's fine, like you get this bleed, but you have the snare in there as well. And that top of the snare, I just want to kind of just get rid of the top spit on the snare. And then I probably want to pan this in a little bit more so that we don't skew the image of where the snare is, right? The snare should be right in the center, but the snare is kind of hanging right because we have this floor tom and the snare in that floor tom. And you can also gate this floor tom if that becomes a big issue, right? I just kind of A/B it and see what you think. So for example, I take this trigger too, just bring it up here, and let's just gate the tom, because I think we're getting enough of that floor tom in the overheads and in the room mic, and it's basically in every mic because it's just playing the whole time, right? So we can see if we can get away with gating it. If not, we won't gate it. But I'm going to take the pan in a little bit, so just a touch. Let's check this. Yeah, so we're hitting the floor tom at the same time as the snare, so that's just kind of a bad idea. It may or may not work. But because it's rumbling the whole time, if you set this trigger to where it's just kind of like giving a nice taper, it might help it not rumble the whole time through the track and make the drums more rhythmic, you know? So you can use envelopes as well. Like for example, you could use like a transient designer and take down the release. Right, so it's not going, right? So before, without the trigger here, so as long as you can hide the idea of it sounding like it's opening and closing, because that can sound really unnatural when you have a drum going like do 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 instead of going do 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 do, right? So you got to kind of find like that happy middle ground where that frequency is not taking up a bunch of stuff because it can mask a lot of things. Imagine a vocal is in that lower register, or a guitar, or the bass, or whatever else. All of a sudden you have this frequency on top of everything going when the bass should be going and then you have the whole time. It can just become a mess, and then you lack definition in your mix, and you're like, why is that happening? Why am I lacking this definition? Why can I not get the low end right or the low mids right? And typically it's because of arrangement and orchestration, but second, it's because you didn't handle those frequencies and those problems. There's two schools of thought here. You have to kind of use your taste. And like I said, I always want things to be musical more than like technically correct. Nobody fucking cares how technically correct it is. They care how it feels when they hear the song and they go, man, that just feels right, man. That feels really good. Sounds good. It's warm. It feels right for the song, right? And what the song is. If it's a rap track that's like really aggressive, you want to be more aggressive, make it feel more aggressive. Technically, there's a lot of ways to do that and to be the liaison between the tech and the feeling for the listener. And that's what a mixing engineer does, right? That's what our job is. What my job is, to make sure that the listener hears it and they don't hear all the technicals. So just be careful with this and mess around with the release, the hold, and try different tools. Like maybe a gate isn't the right answer for that idea. Maybe it is a transient designer, right? So let's try like a transient master and just maybe take the sustain down. You know what I mean? Let's kill the trigger here and solo out the floor tom and mess around with the sustain here. See how that just kind of turns it down a little bit? Like it's good. Like it sounds great. To me, that's the answer. It's not to try to like set the gate perfectly, but just to take the sustain down on a transient master. Pretty simple. And that's Native Instruments. I love these plugins. There's a lot of really great plugins from Native Instruments. So I just take the sustain down. You could also use, there's one from Sonox that's really good. Sony used to own it. Sonics. Yeah, Sonics. They make the inflator and all that. They also make, it's called Onvolution, I believe. Here, let me show it to you. Sony Oxford, sorry, it's like hard, it's like a mouthful. So I don't even own this in UAD. But this is the kind of same thing, right? It's just a little bit more advanced. So you can really kind of dial it in better. Transients, attack, hold, release, sensitivity, sustain, hold, attack, release on the profile. This is a really, really great plugin for that. A lot of engineers use this. But I'm just going to use the Transient Master because it's simple and it's effective. There's also, just to give you guys other options, because, I know a lot of you are like, I don't want to go buy another plugin that costs $1 million. But SPL, right? SPL kind of started this idea. But they have the Transient Designer Plus. You could use these. These come with bundles, right? They come with like the Plugin Alliance bundle, like $15-20 a month. You get all these plugins. You get the SPL as well. So this is not a bad deal either, right? You have attack, sustain, and you can always just A/B them as well. So like, let's bypass the Transient Master, open this one up, and take the sustain down. Let's hear it. So there you go. Two really good tools just to get rid of some of that rumble. And the reason I'm doing that obviously is because as I bring in other elements, that rumble is just going to get exasperated, right? Over and over, and it's going to hit more processing. When I go to the master and I bring up low-level information, you're going to bring up more of that rumble. So we just kind of take care of that stuff at the source, right? Very, very important. And, either of these is fine for me. I think the transient master, I'm just going to stick with that. Also, I'm going to take these drums and I'm going to make a group out of them, right? All these, just the drums. I'm going to hit Command G. I'm going to hit drums mix. Drum mix, and then just make a group. So that way I can just kind of solo them. Oh, why didn't that work? That's weird. I was hoping that I could just solo and mute without holding down key commands and shit, but whatever. I think this is only going to work on volume and stuff. But those are all going to my drum mix bus, going to my drum master bus, right? So now I can kind of tweak this to fit what I'm going for. But for now, I think this sounds great. I'm just going to start to balance in the percussion, which I think the shaker is a little loud and it's to the right. To kind of dampen a shaker, the way I like to do it is use lo-fi in Avid Pro Tools, just built in, and you could use like the sample rate reduction, or you can use saturation, but just check out what this does. It kind of rounds it out. So that's a really cool tool just to like make something feel more heavy and less pretty, right? Because sometimes things are just too pretty and they just don't sound that great, you know? I'm going to take the sample size up and I'm just going to use a little bit of that saturation. I think that sounds really cool. Kind of gives a weight to the shaker as well, instead of it just being which, you know, for this song, you want kind of that like warm, heavy weight kind of stuff. Like you want it to feel like a warm blanket on you. That's how I feel. Tambo. I think this needs like a little bit of room, a little space. So I'm going to go to the Valhalla Room, which I think is an amazing plugin. Who doesn't love this plugin? I think it's on like every record ever. Probably Vintage Verb more so. But this is very simple and basic. I'm just going to mix it in. Yeah, not much, just balancing it in. Those, you know, mixing is very, it's very modular. So I'm going to set something. I'm not going to set it and forget it. You never do that in mixing, especially when you're first building the mix. You just kind of get something to a good point and you're like, all right, now let's get the next instrument to that point. And then you like kind of build up the mix, and then you get the vocals sounding fucking amazing, and then you build the drums back up to the vocals sounding amazing, and then you get the guitars to wrap around everything. It's not, and you're always going back and forth. You're like, I better go turn that down. No, I got to tweak that. Now that's getting a little crazy, you know, because as you bring in other elements, you might go, there's too much masking there from this element now. So now I got to like automate that and change that. But for now, I'm just like setting the foundation. I'm just putting down the concrete. I'm not going to go and polish the concrete. I'm not going to go and level the concrete completely flat and perfectly compact and then put in all the, brush it and all that and finish it. Why would I do that? You know, I need to build the house on top of the concrete as well. I need to put up the rebar. I need to do everything else. I can't just put the concrete down and finish it off and make it perfect. You know, these drums got to be perfect. If I sat here and mix these drums for hours trying to make them perfect, and then I throw the bass in and I'm like, fuck, the drums sound like shit. You know, it's a mix. It's not we're not just, sound designing drums here, if you will. All right, you guys have any questions at all? I don't know who's still left, but what's up? What's up with you? Alden, how did you learn how to mix? Bro, it's been 25 plus years. I didn't know that I was mixing back when I first started kind of messing around with stuff in garages and in my bedroom and shit, but it's been a long time. I went to school also. I got a degree in sound, a 4-year bachelor's degree about 13, 14 years ago in the Bay Area at a college called Expression Digital Arts. I've been mixing for, I'd say I'd say about 20 years, right? Since I was about 20 years old. Yeah, that's it, dude. Just doing it, studying, practice, teaching, study, practice, teach, rinse and repeat, bunch of different records, R&B, trap, soul records, pop, funk, indie pop, synth pop, country, singer-songwriter, whatever the fuck you want, orchestral, scores. I've done a bunch of mixes on scores, Worked on the Lego Movie, 22 Jump Street, Thor Ragnarok, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, Hotel Transylvania, like all sorts of shit. TV shows, sync licensing stuff, commercials, blah, 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 blah. My own records, independent artists that hit me up and they're like, yo, yeah, I want to give you $500. I want you to fucking make my record sound amazing and make content on it and stream live and help me, And I'm like, yeah, I love doing that. I love helping artists. So that's what I'm doing here. But yeah, it's been a long road, my man. Very, very long road. Hey, it's Ron. What's up, Ron from Louisiana? Good to see you. Dope. Yeah, man. I'm glad you found me too, man. Philip, good to have you, bro. Oh yeah, it's working. Yeah, Trigger's dope. Trigger's really great for drum replacement as well. I love it. I've been using it for years. It's funny how like the Ecamm, which is like the live software I'm using, it'll like explain what you put on screen. It says like face dash blue dash smiling face dash blue. But yeah, I get it. It's probably like some nice cool emoji that I don't get to see. Okay, let's pop the bass in. So the bass to me is like thin. It's not like it's just kind of thin and doesn't really sound right. But let's thicken it up. Let's get it gluey and gooey. And yeah, we'll get there. We'll get it somewhere. Yeah, it's like a little much on the like high mids and not enough on the beefy low bottom. So I'm going to do a couple things here, and I'm just kind of like messing around right now. I'm not like, yeah, I'm going to use the limiter and I'm going to use whatever I got right here. Like, it's not what I'm doing. But I think what I'm going to try is an 1176 because I think it needs that kind of like fuzz and that warmth. But it's sounding good. It's sounding good already. It's well tracked. What's up? Sweden in the house. That's what's up. I love it. Australia in the house. It's all about the orange clip. Yeah, I love orange clip. That shit's amazing. Yeah, I definitely use orange clip. Not on these drums, but I'd use them more on program drums. I use orange clip on that. But I am using gold clip. I know that. And I love gold clip. It's on the master bus here. This is just fucking incredible plugin. So good. One of my favorites. Alchemy as well. Like, we should turn this on. Just kind of take the top down a little bit. That'll be good. I don't mess with any of that shit until I'm like really into the final stage of the mastering and stuff. But I'm just kind of mixing through it a little bit right now. All right, so let's get this bass kind of a little bit more thicker. It's amazing what an 1176 can do, man. It's just like brings in this like nice harmonic content that just sounds amazing. So that's great. I don't think I really need an EQ yet. I might. I don't really know yet. Not really sure. Track spacer, I'm going to leave that on. I think this is for the kick drum. So I think when the kick drum hits, we're kind of ducking here. Yeah, so this is the louder bus. So pretty much just kind of makes room for it when I hit here. So I'll show you what that does. Just a little extra headroom there, nothing crazy. And I don't want like that bass to be lost when the kick is hitting or anything like that. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm just looking for it to kind of give me a little bit of headroom. That's all that's doing. So kick sub, and the kick itself is going to the louder bus. And that louder bus is on the side chain of that track spacer, which is just going to kind of give a little bit of, dB or two of like room when that kick hits for the low end. That's all I'm doing. And I like doing that because when you get to the final master, you're going to get more dB out of it. It's going to get a little bit louder for you. But it depends, like you may not want it louder. Also, the snare is in this verb here, I think. Yeah, so that's kind of a weird verb. I don't know how happy I am about that, or using that. It feels distant, but it doesn't feel like dimension to me. Dimension comes from reflections, right? It doesn't come from reverb drench. This doesn't feel like it gets deeper to me. It just kind of feels kind of weird. I don't know. I'm not really that happy with it, is what I'm saying. So I might go from the Drum Master just to give this kit more dimension. I might do a send here and just do like a whole new track here. And let's call this like drum dimension. Right? Create this. And then on this, let's try the SP, the Eventide. I think it's called SP. It's the room. Yeah, reverb. So this 2016, this has a really cool thing in here called position. And you could kind of like push things back. I really like that about this. And we can just kind of like give the drums a little bit more dimension this way. Now for this drum dimension, we want to color this what I always color all my effects returns, right? And then I want this to show up in the all drums. Right? That's where this needs to come back. That's the return of it. Okay, and then the reverb itself, I don't want this to be crazy long or anything, but I might mess with the pre-delay here, right? So I might give this like a 40, like 30 to 40 millisecond pre-delay. Just gonna give it depth. Decay being at 3 seconds seems pretty long to me for this kind of thing. Position back, diffusion like in the middle. Diffusion, if you turn that up too high, it's like scattering too much. So I kind of still want the slap of like a wall. So if I have the diffusion at 0, it's going to be like a reflection off a wall, right? If I put the diffusion all the way up, it's going to be a perfect scatter like in a very diffuse room, right? So I'm going to be kind of blending that a little bit, like 50%. And let's return this and let's just hear it. Right, that does quite a bit, and it sounds really cool. Sounds really musical. One thing I want to make sure of, though, is like with my EQ, I don't want to bring in too much high and too much low. So on this, you have an EQ where you can do the frequency and the gain on the low and the high. So, for example, I can take, 350, 400 area and just kind of turn it down. And I think that's good, actually, around 4K. And turn that down a little bit. Yeah, it really makes those drums feel more like the record should feel, which is like that really like, distant, open, big sound. And that's all that's doing, really cool plugin. I really like this plugin. I don't know why this just went to +6. I had it like -3 or something. Must have accidentally clicked something weird. All right, so that's all good. Drum dimension, just returning to the all drums, sending from the Drum Master bus, right? All cool there. I want to set this Shadow Hills compressor so that it's doing just a little bit more. So just compressing a little bit more. All right, do you feel like how detached the bass is from the drums? Like it's like it feels too thin still, right? So I want to make sure that I get that right. The bass is just not right for me. I don't know if it's like a saturation thing or something I need to use here, but I'm really not sure. I'm gonna try a couple things. I'm trying to figure out like what would really like give me some fatness, but like not anything else. Like I don't want to, overdo it, I guess is the best way to put it. I'm going to try this Pulsar plugin, which I love. I love these guys. They make some fucking sick stuff. Primavera. I think this is like a brand new one from them. This might do what I want it to do, but it also might not. So I think this is kind of like a spring reverb with a preamp and everything, but I think the preamp, if we drive the preamp a little bit and we do some, we'll mess with this. Yeah, that's starting to really sound cool. I almost like a little bit of the spring reverb in there. It's it kind of like gives this like more like whoa, like dreamy vibe. But I don't want to overdo it because I that may be pushing the record too far into something else. But I really like it. I really think that's cool to like mix in the verb and just trying to find the decay time. And then there's all these different like lo-fi to hi-fi kind of vibes here with the spring reverb. So I'll just kind of flip through these and maybe give a little bit of that verb. I think it's really cool. It kind of helps everything be a little bit more distant instead of like the drums are distant, but then like the bass is right here in your face, like getting it to sit with the drums a little bit more feels right to me. Yeah, that's sounding really cool. I really like that. And then I'm going to leave that alone. Now I'm going to start to bring in some other stuff here. I think the vocals next. There's like guitars and all sorts of stuff in here, but vocals are going to be the most important thing for this. This loop as well, I think this is like a main element in this. Let's just bring this up here. I know that this is going to be a super important part of the whole thing. So I have all my like blue stuff. This is all like my synths, right? So I have like a keys, augs, high key, mid key, blah, 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 DDD, right? This is kind of like a analog synth kind of vibe. So I'm going to make active this analog synth, and this has like a pan man on it. I'm going to probably bypass that. And weird, the loop is mono, which is super weird. I would think that would be stereo, but let's just change we'll make it stereo. We'll throw it into like some stereo stuff, because I don't think that's going to sound that good. Make this mono, and yes, okay. And now we can drag and drop that right there. This is going to the instrument mix bus, and has a Pro Q3 on it, taking some of the top down. Makes sense. Let's hear it. And this is where I go back to the reference and I'm like, yo, is that really that mono? There's no way that sound is that mono. So let's hear the reference and listen to that sound. Yeah, it's definitely not mono. So let's try to get that to be more stereo. And sometimes clients, they'll send you the thing without, like they'll just make it a mono loop or whatever like this. That's not a problem. I mean, it gives me actually more freedom to do like send effects and shit. But I do have reverb. I have a slap delay here. I have fattening, which is probably the first thing I would send it to. And I'll just go to the fattening bus. And this is just going to widen it. It's sending to like a doubler kind of effect. You'll hear it right away. I'll blend it in. Beautiful. Another thing I want to do is just kind of tuck it back in the mix. So I'm going to use some True Verb. Got this tip from Jason Joshua, which I just love his mixes. I think they're really great. And it's funny because I apply Jason Joshua techniques to like indie pop and indie rock mixes, and he mainly does like R&B, hip hop, trap, a lot of Latin stuff, reggaeton, things like that. But it's fun to, use some of these techniques. So tuck the synth back. This is just a preset that I created. It's just kind of push back the synth. Right? Like so much more dimension happening now in that synth. And just to like, A-B it, let's bypass everything that I've got here. And let's pop it back in and out. Yeah, sounding cool. I like it. I think it's such a vibe. And I think I'm going to try other stuff as well on this sound, but I don't want to get too carried away with like sound designing this until I get the vocals in. Vocals are the most important part. And honestly, it's time for me to take an ear break. So I'm probably going to take a little ear break. Been mixing for, hour and a half or so? I don't know. Yeah. So I'm usually about 90 minutes in, I'll take an ear break, and then, I'll take like 15 minutes, and then I'll come back and I'll hit it again. Because I do want fresh ears for the vocals, for sure. Super important. But hopefully you guys like the stream. Hopefully you got something out of it. Any other questions you guys have? Drop them in the comments. I got like, 5-10 minutes to answer some questions. I'm going to save this. And what do we got? What do y'all got? All right. Do you mix in the box, or are you using any hardware? I don't. I used to. I went through all these like ups and downs and phases and waves of hardware versus software. It's like I had pretty bad ADHD growing up, my whole family. But the hardware stuff I find, like I have a bunch of synths and stuff, right? But I find that the hardware stuff just distracted me. So I've bought and sold so much hardware over the years. Now I really strip down my setup. I mainly mix in the box, like 100% in the box. And so many engineers do nowadays. And I think the biggest reason for me is not just recall, right? Like being able to recall and do revisions and stuff, but it has a lot to do with my attention span, and I get carried away. Even plugins, like, if you guys know my content stuff, you see me using a lot of different plugins. I have like the plugin of the week. I make a lot of content on plugins because I use so many plugins and I like new plugins. And, I even find that I can get a little carried away with plugins. Too many options can actually hinder you and make it so you can't work as fast and you can't express yourself and create and mix and just be artistic and creative. And I don't like that. So I try really hard to stay away from having a bunch of hardware around me. Even with my synths, I used to have them like all stacked right here. And before that, even like I'd have them like just plugged in all the time. And it would like, pull me away and distract me. So now they're like off to the side and I just plug in one at a time and mess with the synth and like I'll add it to the track. I'll go through the whole track, when I'm producing and, one at a time. And it's really hard because even these synths, they have so many sounds in them. So yeah, I'm all in the box for the most part, Magnus. Like I love mixing in the box, and the plugins have gotten so good that, I can mix in the box or I could use hardware. I know SSL consoles, Neve consoles. I know all the hardware stuff, Tube Techs and 1176s and LA2As and blah, blah, blah. And I've used all that shit. But it's not worth it for me. It's too distracting for me. Fattening doubler with some EQ. Usually use some for that thing, or it depends. For the doubling, or for the fattening effect, that's what you're asking, I think. I've used this for every mix I've ever done, honestly, for the last maybe 15 years. So the fattening is the RComp Doubler 2, Q4. This is all going to change, right? Depends on the record. And then the S1 Imager to push it even a little bit wider. So that's all. Very simple. And that just returns the all Vox. You can return it to the all instruments. You can duplicate it, mess with it, do whatever you want with it. But yeah, the fattening is amazing. I love that. Been using that forever. I think I picked that up from somebody like 15 years ago, something like that. But yeah, that's a great tool. Great way to fatten up vocals as well. Kind of make them fill out the middle more. When you coming back? I'll come back. I'll probably do another stream maybe tomorrow or Monday. If you guys are down, and if you guys share the show and you show love and you drop comments and stuff, I'm always more willing and wanting to do live streams when you guys actually participate. When I come on here and I'm like live streaming and talking and like doing all this shit, it's like, and like nobody shares it, nobody drops a comment, but like, I see that it's got 400 views on it. I'm like, fuck you guys. Such a waste. Like you guys taking all my shit and just like using it, applying it, making content about it, all that stuff, and then not even saying thank you or dropping a comment. It's like, that's lame. So I'm kind of tired of that. So that's why I don't stream as much anymore. Yo, you're so welcome, Scott. Like I said, I'll be more willing to stream if you guys really, show up for it. API today, baby. What do you got here? When you get panoramas, the same octave, just a different take, do you set them to 100%? There are 3 vocals in totals. How do you mix the other 2, left and right earphone? Is it the same mix? I'm not really understanding what this question is. I think you're asking about doubles. So when you're talking about doubles, like vocal doubles, yeah, I do left and right. Just pan one left, one right on the double, and then you have the lead in the middle. Yeah, great way to do it. That's how I usually do it. Panning them 100%, that depends, right? Like sometimes I'm panning like 50% just to thicken the vocal out in the middle. That's what I think doubles are really used for. But yeah, I always take doubles on my vocals, no matter what, even if I don't use them. I have a question about Fallout. What were you thinking when you wrote the song? Like, what was your inspiration on that record? That's a good question. So that record, I mean, I was just like paying attention to what was going on in the world, just like recently, a lot of political shit, a lot of division. I think politics are very divisive. I think politicians in the U.S. are corrupt as fuck. I just think our political system is very corrupt. We're headed down a really weird place right now. It's an election year. So like that track, actually, like the inspiration and the writing for that really came out of that. Like just the frustration of everybody fighting each other, and it's kind of like the idea behind the song is kind of like an apocalypse, an apocalyptic kind of viewpoint of the world. And understanding that we're still humans, right? So a lot of times like shit goes down and everything's falling apart, but we're still humans. So we'll still go out, we'll spend all our money on credit cards, drink a bunch, and party and hang out and just do what we've always done, So that's where that chorus came from. And the chorus came first. It was, when the world falls out, will we feel it all the same? Or will we keep on dancing? Like when shit goes to hell, will we all be like completely depressed and like mega, distraught? Or are we just going to like go and do what we've always done? Go out to the bars, be humans. You know what I mean? That's kind of where all that came from. It's hard, man. It's hard producing, writing, mixing, mastering your own music. I mean, I have different players on that record. Kip Allen out of Nashville played drums on that. A friend of mine here, Marco Flores, played guitars on that. Bass player Dugina out of Brazil, really dope bass player, played bass on that track. So yeah, I always like to bring in musicians for stuff. But that was a fun song, but it was also kind of it was a hard song because the sound of the song was very, it felt to me very like thought-provoking and kind of like numb, like the idea of it. But then the chorus, I wanted it to explode and still be kind of like a pop record, you know what I mean? So that's kind of where I was going with that. Take. Okay, I don't know what that means. Yeah, that's what I mean. Okay, cool. Yeah, so just doubles, left, right. Always take doubles, take harmonies, take whatever, and then figure it out in your production, in your arrangement later. Like, do I like this double? Do I want to use it here? Do I want to spot double it on just certain words to punctuate certain phrases? But these are all production questions, right? Like, not really necessarily mixing questions. Everybody's different with their production. I like just good music. Like, I like country, singer-songwriter, pop, hip-hop, whatever. I don't care what style or genre it is, as long as it makes you feel something and it feels authentic. And if you're taking doubles and they don't feel authentic, they don't feel like they're serving a purpose, then why have them, right? Sometimes they're used stylistically, like with doubles, like in indie records. That DJO song, and when I'm back in Chicago, I feel it. That's like super stacked up with doubles for that like indie retro vibe, So it doubles in pop records, they're like very tight. You know, the vocalist Dua Lipa is going to take exactly the same double on her left and right, and then they're going to stack it up like 3 times, and they're going to have like, you know, whispery ones where she's doing it a little bit different, you know, a little bit in her nose like this, and then another one where she's doing full voice, and another one, you know, it just thickens things out and makes things more exciting, etc. But yeah, just use them however you want. Even if you got those vocals doubles, using that fattening effect on them depends. Always depends. Do I want more fattening? Do I want the vocals to sound thicker and wider and bigger? And I don't have the takes from the artist, like where the artist didn't stack up the takes, then I'll probably use the fattening. Yeah. Or I'll fake it somehow. When I listen to that mix in a car, I ask myself, how and when can I get my mix? Yeah. Thanks, man. That means a lot, dude. I honestly, the stuff that I mix that's my own records, it's a lot easier because I'm producing those records. So I'm shaping the sounds as I create them, right? So I like might plug in the Juno 106 and I might spend, 2 hours getting the right sound on the synth before any plugins, So it's a lot easier when you're producing yourself because then you can really dial in the sound design and the palette, and you don't have to rely on a stem that's just not really that good and then try to make it interesting and add all these plugins and texturize it. I do that at the source a lot of the times. So it does make the final product better when I can produce stuff, So anyway, I appreciate you guys coming through. Thanks for the questions, and I'll try to do more live streams, obviously. But it's your guys' job to share this shit and to, like and comment and play your role. All right. And I'll leave this one up for you guys so you can, watch it again. I'll also leave some links in the description if you guys ever want to work together, get a mix and master from me or production or whatever else. Okay. Guys, have a good one. Happy Saturday. Peace out.